Fear Not, Episode 58. Hi, I'm Billy Atwell, and I believe that consistently facing your fears is the only way to realize your truest self and to make those confident choices that will help you to obtain your deepest held hopes and dreams. I have faith that this podcast series will show you that you are not alone, that it will strengthen you and give you courage to face your fears, and that it will help you to permanently cross over into a life of living beyond your fears. Join me on this journey as we listen and learn from others as they share their experiences in facing and overcoming their own fears. Hello, everybody. Today, you and I are going to be joined by Dr. Ron Epstein. Hello, Dr. Epstein. How are you today?
Great. It's a pleasure to be here.
Are you ready to fear not today?
Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Ron Epstein is a family physician, teacher, researcher, and writer who has devoted his career to understanding and improving patient-physician communication, quality of care, and clinician resilience. Dr. Epstein has done groundbreaking research funded by the NIH and other major foundations in how to improve communication in medical settings when it matters the most, whether facing serious or terminal illness and when uncertainty prevails, to promote patient involvement in care, improve communication with patients whose symptoms defy explanation, help patients understand prognosis in serious illness, and achieve a shared mindset when faced with difficult decisions. Through innovative programs that promote mindfulness, communication, and self-awareness, he has helped a generation of physicians to practice more attentively, develop stronger relationships with patients, approach difficult decisions more mindfully, and develop inner strength and resilience to combat burnout and be more present when patients need it the most. Dr. Epstein, can you take a few moments to fill in the gaps and maybe also give us a brief glimpse of your personal life?
Thank you, first of all, for all of that. It's been a passion of me to understand the inner lives of doctors and patients and how those intersect. And in fact, that was really what motivated me to go to medical school in the first place. I actually started out life as a musician, and so my understanding of communication really started from, I would say, a more primal understanding of how humans communicate with one another, which is really beyond words. We're really whole human beings interacting with one another in very complex and meaningful ways. And I think medicine offered me a real opportunity to be with people, in this case patients, in a way that could really make a difference. Also, starting when I was 16, I learned how to do meditation. That was quite some time ago, and it's something that stuck with me and initially was very useful for me in my personal life, but only later did I realize that it had implications for how I interacted with patients and other colleagues when in medical contexts. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what makes me tick.
Well, thank you for sharing. Dr. Epstein, would you also share with us one of the biggest fears you've had to face?
Oh boy, I think there are kind of generic fears that all doctors face, which is that you're not going to be good enough, and almost to the point where you are worried that you're an imposter. And they've actually done research asking doctors if they have ever felt like an imposter, felt like they were just a stand-in. They really didn't know enough to do their job. And it's surprising, probably the majority of doctors would say yes to that. And those who don't say yes probably feel it deep down, but are unable to admit it to themselves. So it's because medicine is complicated and people are complicated, and even with all the medical knowledge that we have, we just don't know very much. I mean, much of what happens to people's bodies and minds is still pretty mysterious. So I think that's one fear, just of this sense of inadequacy to the task. And a second one, I think, that is also pretty common is that sometimes it's scary to become involved with another person who's suffering deeply, because you feel some of that pain and it affects you personally. and you wonder if you have enough psychological reserve to really tolerate uh, over and over again uh, encountering deep suffering and really acknowledging and feeling it. I'm a family doctor, and I also do palliative care, so I take care of a lot of people at the end of life. And the kind of suffering that people experience is uh, it's different for every person. For some people, it's physical. For some people, it's psychological. For some people, it's social. For some people, it's existential about kind of what their life means. And so that this um, ability to be with suffering and not be consumed by it, I think is a fear. It's something that I've had to face personally, and many doctors do.
So, how do you manage that fear so that you don't become overwhelmed or drowned in it?
Yeah. Um, I think a couple of things, and I'm not sure how I learned all of this, but the first is to be curious about it. So I think our basic human reaction once we recognize that we're afraid of something is avoidance. We want to just get away from it, make the fear go away, either by running away or fighting it or doing something, but to try to extinguish it. But that doesn't work. Fear is not that just doesn't work that way. If you try to push it away, it always comes back. So the alternative is to be curious about it, to turn towards it, to try to understand it, see how it works, and see what it does to you, see what impulses it has, but resisting the need to act on it in a way that's ultimately not healthy. And so that's the first thing, is being curious. And the second part is being present, is just saying that there is fear here. I'm experiencing fear, but there's more to me than just that. The poet Walt Whitman, in his epic poem, once said, I contain multitudes. And he wasn't really just talking about himself. He was talking about human potential, that while you have fear, you can also have resilience and courage and energy and curiosity and presence, so that you can be experiencing contrasting emotions at the same time. It's not that the fear goes away, but fear is only one part of a larger constellation of feelings.
So, would you say that it sounds like that you recognize the fear, but do you sort of make a internal statement that you're not giving in to it? I mean, how do you?
It's different than that. It's because that is also another kind of fighting. So it's the best analogy I have is when I used to play concerts. The myth is that experienced musicians don't feel stage fright. In fact, they do. They feel intense stage fright, and but also have the capacity to know that they can do the work that they need to. That is, do something incredibly beautiful and meaningful, while still experiencing that sense of anxiety and dread. And for me, my musical training was useful in that way, because I knew that the dread wouldn't go away if I tried to pretend it wasn't there. But still, I had to get up on stage, right? And still wanted to do something beautiful and meaningful. So that's really that was kind of the way that I learned to deal with the fear. It's not feeling. I guess you could say it's being strong, but I would say that it's a different kind of strength. It's an inner strength, knowing that it might hurt, but that you're not going to fall apart.
So kind of feel it, but do it anyway.
That sounds a little too stoical to me.
Okay.
It's feel it and do it at the same time. It's the ability to live the contradiction.
Okay.
Okay, do you follow me there? Because this is really important. It's that you're not trying to defeat fear or make it go away or overcome it, but you want to, in a way, make friends with it. I know it sounds odd, because the last thing you want to do is to make friends with something that's uncomfortable. But that's the best way I can express it. Is you come to know it, it becomes familiar, and in a way it guides you. It tells you when something's important.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Dr. Epstein, surely I mean, it sounds to me like you've had quite the amazing journey in learning and dealing with fear. Are there other resources that you've come across that you could share with us today?
Oh boy, in terms of places to go or things to read, is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Boy, I think that the things that have been most helpful to me is developing a habit of mindfulness, a habit of presence. And for me, that came through my meditation practice initially. So, and there are many ways that you can approach that. And and many different traditions, and so I don't really want to be prescriptive and say there's one way and this is the best. But I think finding some way that habitually every single day that you are able to be present with yourself, even for just a short period of time. I think that's really important. A practice of stillness, and the I think the second has to do with always managing to see something positive in a situation, not in a Pollyannish kind of way, but so, for example, I at one point in which I was dealing with a number of stresses, I decided that every day I was going to have at least one moment of exquisite beauty, and I was going to seek that out. And so that moment of exquisite beauty might have been looking in somebody's face, or looking at a flower or a tree, or reading a poem, or listening to a piece of music. But just knowing that that beauty was within grasp, even in situations that are difficult, gave me a sense of solace, a sense of strength, a sense of peace. And so it's something that you can carry with you that no one can take away from you. When you read about people like Viktor Frankl, who was in a concentration camp for a number of years, and Nelson Mandela, who was, we all know his story. Think about what gave people in those extreme circumstances the strength that they had, and it was a belief that they ultimately had control over their own thoughts and feelings. That those were things that no one could take from them, and also both of them were able to see beauty in the world, even in the most dire circumstances. There's a research study that's still ongoing at Duke, in which they ask people to simply write down 3 things for which they're grateful every day, and note the psychological effect of doing that. And we all know that that gratitude is a very strong and powerful emotion. It makes us feel very good, and also when we feel grateful for things, we're actually more likely to do good things for other people. And in fact, that's what they found, was that people, just by virtue of drawing their attention to something that they're grateful for each day, became more resilient, more effective in the world, less burned out, etc. But this is not to say that the systems that we work within aren't troubled. So I think that the medical establishment is not a healthy situation to work in. I don't think you need me to tell you that. It's very troubled, and structural changes are tremendously needed in order to humanize what ultimately should be a healing enterprise.
Are you ready for the speed run?
Sure.
What individual, whether they be fiction or real, has made the most impact on your life?
I would say Walt Whitman. I read his Leaves of Grass when I was a teenager, and it was as if the entire world was opening. The entire world was mine to experience. It was kind of the earliest experience of this kind of opening up. that I can think of. There have been many people since then, but it just reading his poetry opened a door for me.
If you could instantly change one thing in the world, what's that change going to be?
To transform every dialogue that involves hate and separation into a dialogue that emphasizes common humanity.
What's your biggest weakness?
I think you'd probably have to ask those who know me well that question rather than me. But I think my biggest weakness is, like all humans, the capacity for self-deception.
What's your biggest strength?
I think my biggest strength is perseverance in terms of knowing what really matters about humans. I don't stop at superficialities.
And if you could have only one book to read, what book is that going to be?
There's a little book that influenced me a lot before I went to study Zen Buddhism called Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. And it's really about attitudes towards meditation, but even more deeply, attitudes towards life. It's how to see everything with fresh eyes.
And Dr. Epstein, do you have a favorite sound?
I would say the sound of waves on the shore.
And if someone would like to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Through my website. Just click on whatever, I think it's called Contact Me or whatever. And so it's www.ronaldepstein.com.
And what parting advice would you like to leave with us today?
I think the advice, I know the theme of this show is about fear, and the parting advice is be curious. Don't let the definitions that you place on things limit your vision.
Thank you for that. And I also would like everyone to know that Dr. Epstein has generously donated a copy of his book, Attending, Medicine, Mindfulness, and Humanity, to be given away. So if you would like an opportunity to win that book, visit the giveaways page at livingbeyondyourfears.com to submit your free entry form today. Dr. Epstein, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing your story and sharing your experiences and your knowledge.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me today. And remember, you cannot achieve everything, but you do have the God-given ability to achieve anything. So stay focused, out of fear, and keep on keeping on. Until next time, be well and peaceful. For more information on today's episode and guest, or for resources that will assist you in overcoming your fears, visit livingbeyondyourfears.com. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, where 3 times a week we move to a life beyond our fears.